What's up, you beauties? Welcome to High and Wide Radio, episode 23. Or is it 24, Jack, of season 5?
This thing says 23.
I don't know if it's 23 or 24, but we're back. I'm Joe Microphone. I'm joined by the one and only Jack Smith. Travis Ballinghoff has the week off. If you're not listening live, please make sure to subscribe, follow, and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. If you're watching live, please make sure to say hello in the comments. And if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, be sure to do so. I'll flash a link real quick. Subscribe, on YouTube, youtube.com/C/Flyers HW. Okay, so if you're up, you're watching us, you probably just watched the Flyers win their final home game in overtime. Owen Tippett, 2 goals, 15.5 seconds left in the overtime. Flyers win 4-3, 39 shots for the Flyers. 28 saves for Carter Hart, stopped 28 of 31 shots. Jack, did you watch the game? What did you think tonight?
I didn't see too much of it. I got home a little late, but what I did see was rather interesting. I come away with two real thoughts. Owen Tippett, first and foremost, like, holy cow, like 26 goals now in the season with a game to go. Who had that? Like, that's awesome. That's so good to see. Especially that last goal. I mean, I think the overtime goal, I think they gave him some space, but man, did he take advantage of it. What a move. And also, it's nice that JVR, 300th goal.
How about that?
Great to see him heating up.
Just in time,
at the end of the season. Yeah.
JVR scored his 300th goal of his career in what's likely to be his final home game as a Philadelphia Flyer. So congratulations to JVR on that accomplishment. We do have some topics that we're going to get to tonight, guys, besides the game. We'll read some off here. So we're going to touch on the DeAngelo speculation, obviously. He's been sitting up in the press box for the last couple games. A couple points I'd like to make there. We're going to touch on Claude Giroux scoring his 1,000th point. Congratulations. Today's the anniversary of Ed Snider's death, Jack, where, if you've been following the Flyers, things have kind of gone downhill since that day. So we will remember the great Mr. Ed Snider. Jack, where do you want to start off tonight?
I mean, the Snider thing, like that what literally happened was a fear of mine going back to like when Lindros was still on the team. Like, when he dies, are they going to be still this aggressive all the time and still be a premier team in the league? Like, where winning matters above everything else? Like, are they still going to carry that forward after he goes? And you said it perfectly. Like, the second he died, it was all downhill from there. Maybe some of the seeds were sown a little bit sooner of them going downhill, but you could see a direct correlation from when he passed away and how this team just sank to the bottom of the standings, and to the point where they were a joke, and everything that he embodied with the team and what he came up with and whatnot. And to see them just get absolutely steamrolled by their division rivals, it's like that was like the rock bottom from that day to just having other teams, fans take over the stadium, which has happened way too many times this season. It's just, I think of that date, and it's unbelievable how it happened, like almost immediately.
It's interesting because I think in a lot of cases when you have an owner or somebody on your side like Ed Snider, maybe a lot of times you take that for granted and you don't realize what you had, kind of thing, where at least I think I can speak for you and I. Do we have Travis with us? Well, I'll finish my point real quick. I think I can speak for you and I, Jack, where I think we did appreciate what we had in Ed Snider. We knew, that we had probably the greatest owner in not only the NHL, but quite possibly all of sports. He was the Flyers. He was a big piece. Like how many teams? I don't really care who the Phillies owner is. I know it's John Middleton, but I don't love John Middleton. You know what I mean? I know that the Eagles owner is Jeffrey Lurie, but I don't love Jeffrey Lurie. Maybe it has something to do with the love of the Flyers, but Ed Snider was and I, should still be the Flyers, and I think if anything, what it should show fans is, damn, you really did have it good. This is what happens when your franchise is not run properly. And at that, real quick, I'm going to bring Trav in here. I think he's on his phone. Trav, are you there? I have you on mute here. Trav maybe join whenever he gets in. I think he went to the Phillies game, so maybe he's in the car or something here. I'll take him off until he pops back on. But yeah, Jack,
No,
any
I just wanted to comment on what you had said about like loving Schneider, but not necessarily loving the other owners. I think a lot of that, for me at least, having gotten into and like hockey at such a young age. Like, I think I went to my first game when I was like 4 years old or maybe younger, and it's been an obsession ever since. Snyder made that team a certain way, and being so impressionable at such a young age, that team shaped me in a way. Like, I expect certain things from my players, how the players should react to the fans. I'm very defensive of the fans, Like, a lot of people are like, oh God, you pissed off the players. I'm like, F that. Like, dude, you work for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
So like,
sure.
he shaped the way I am as a fan. And I think that's why his legacy means so much more to me. Not to mention, it was not just the way he was, like, that team performed under him. Like, he did not take any shit. He righted the ship. He'll spend all the money. All he cared about was winning. And yeah, it's that's why I think you can say you love him and or whatever with the other ones. It's part of who I am.
Yeah, I mean, he would he so he wouldn't watch it up in the stands with the fans, but he would watch the game with the fans. I mean, yeah, the TV would pan to his reactions during games. You knew if he was pissed. Like, he was one of those guys where you knew where you stood, and he loved his team, loved his players, loved the people that worked in the stadium. He was just the best. He was the epitome of the best that you could possibly get. And it's so hard to live up to that. So whoever was going to come in after him, it's like, whoever played shortstop after Derek Jeter retired was never going to be good enough. So it's like whoever was going to own or take the same spot as Ed Snider after he passed away didn't have a shot. And unfortunately, they weren't even close in any capacity, to Mr. Ed Snider. So yeah, why don't we move on to our next topic here, Jack? So still Flyers related, but it's probably the best player the Flyers have had in their franchise since Eric Lindros. Claude Giroux scored his 1,000th point of his NHL career last night as a member of the Ottawa Senators. He had 3.92 goals and an assist, and now has 1,000 points, and I believe 1,099 games, which is pretty cool. Jack, you want to talk about Claude Giroux?
Oh man, it's so bittersweet, isn't it? Like, this guy should have been taking us to the promised land. Definitely had the talent. Never built the team around him. Getting a lot of flack towards the end for being a part of that country club mentality, at least off the ice, because it was my belief on the ice. How could you not want to play for this guy? How could you not like be all in every game? How hard he plays and how good he is, and how he's such a game changer. And that's why I was shocked to see that the locker room culture was as bad as it was. It was just, we just had to move on. It was just time to move on. It was the beginning of starting fresh, whether the front office was going to go with him, not at that time. And I'm still a fan. I still want to see him do well. It's a shame. Senators really, they didn't make the playoffs. They made the playoffs last year. Yeah, Drew and the winger from Chicago,
The
the
Brinket,
Brinket,
yeah,
yeah,
sure.
and then they even trade for the defenseman from Arizona at the deadline as well, Chikrin. They
Chicken,
trade
yeah.
for Chikrin, and they missed the playoffs. I'm like, oh, I feel bad for his milestones. It's nice. I'm like, yeah, he was a great player. Like, I'm really happy. But when I think deeply about it, it's bittersweet. It's the only way I can come away with it.
I think that's fair because I don't know. I don't know if it's just me. Like, I could easily come on here and I could say very, I'm excited for Claude Giroux. I'm glad he did it. Yada yada. And I would be lying to you guys. Like when I heard he hit 1,000 points, and I'm like this with a lot of stuff. Like, oh, good for Claude Giroux. Not that I didn't care, but I didn't go back and watch the highlights from last night, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me see his 1,000th point. So it's not that I don't care, but I just don't think that I care enough to be like, cool.
It's
If
funny that you say that because when I think of Drew in general, you think of a lot of great plays like the shift, like the overtime goal against Chicago. I was at that game. Even the Stanley Cup play when he was a young pup. You think of all these great like plays from Drew. I used to watch these all the time. I used to just rewatch them and give me a feel good, real feel good feeling. After like the last 2 years, I don't watch any of his replays at all. So does that kind of explain where I am? I
Are you
love
mad
him.
at him?
I really do. But he just is unfortunately a major icon of the worst era of hockey. And it's not his fault. I get that. I really do. But he was the face when this happened. And that's why it's bittersweet. He deserved so much better. We all did. I don't want to remember this time. So that's what it comes down to. It's a shame. It's not all his fault, but he's the face.
Yeah, it's I think you pretty much laid it out there. It's hard to have, and you guys know, because I think I'm pretty vocal about how I feel about Claude Giroux, whether I'm right or wrong. He was a great player, and I'm not even sure that I appreciated him fully for what he did here, because he did so much more than score points and score goals. His hockey IQ is off the charts, yada yada. Um, but I think for somebody like me, Jack, it's very hard for me to appreciate that about a player when year after year the team's missing the playoffs. And I'm not blaming Giroux for that, but he was the captain for it, right? Like when you think of Mike Richards, when he was the last captain I truly remember before Giroux. What do you think about when you think of Mike Richards?
I mean, I understand that Giroux is a better player, but the way Richards played goes back to what I was saying about Snider. Like, talk about a Flyers captain. Like, what he just embodied that from like the Broad Street Bully era,
Right?
and
Like I think
that.
I think of playoff runs and going to the Stanley Cup and being right
That's the
there.
second part. That's it. Like, and the other thing with Snyder as well, the success was there,
Yep.
and they were always in the playoffs. There's memorable playoff series from runs you probably barely remember. Like, how about the Game 7 overtime victory against Washington? How about the series against Montreal before they were anything? And then you talk about the cup years and coming back against Boston and all that. And it's like they didn't win the cup, but I have a ton of memories, good memories. Like
Yeah.
it's insane how good they were during that period. And but also for him to embody the team the way he did, it was like perfect.
For sure. I mean, even go back to Eric Lindros. What do you remember? You remember dominance. You remember cup runs. Playoffs every year. Uh, I think I'll speak for myself. I don't so much focus on player success the way it seems like maybe a lot of fans do, Jack. Especially, and I get it. It's there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Having a favorite player and following their career and wanting certain accolades for them and wishing them all the success. What I've noticed about myself is I watch the Flyers more for the Flyers. I mean, it's weird. It's weird. I don't know how to explain this, but the players wearing the jerseys are only kind of stopping through, for 5 to 10 years if they're lucky. Whereas we've been here for 35. We're not going anywhere, kind of thing. We watch the same logo year after year, right? And I watch. What I'm trying to say is I watch for the logo. I watched for the Flyers. I want I want our laundry to beat the other team's laundry, and I want us to have the best laundry. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, I'm happy. Good for Claude Giroux, but I can't say that it makes any difference in my life that Claude Giroux scored 1,000 points. Like honestly, and I know a lot of the listeners maybe they're gonna think whatever about me, but good for Claude Giroux. If he would have scored it as a Flyer, it would have been a nice little event. But unless they're making playoffs, unless they're making cup runs, 1,000 points is. This is going to suck to say, Jack, but I'm going to say it. It's 1,000 empty points. You didn't go anywhere. They're just points, dude.
Oh God.
We have another comment.
I know exactly how you feel. Dude, this feeling. Oh God, I'm gonna get roasted for this. This feeling for me even goes back to his last game as Flyer. Like I couldn't get that hyped about it. I couldn't. Like it really meant a lot to some people in some ways, and I get it. I'm sorry. Like I expect this team to win. That's how I was raised. This is a joke what they've become. And he unfortunately embodied it no matter how good he was. And no matter how much it wasn't his fault. He was the face.
So I think, we kind of, we're kind of in agreement there. And, we have someone that Dave agrees with us. I don't give a shit. If you're listening or you're watching and you disagree with us, please feel free to chime in.
Roast me.
And let us know, because Jack, I don't think our opinions here are very popular. It seemed like a lot of people followed Giroux. As soon as he went to Florida, people were buying up Florida Panther Giroux T-shirts, which, when Richards got traded to Los Angeles, I wasn't buying Los Angeles Kings merch. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's something. I've never owned another team's jersey, hat, nothing. It's all been Flyers. Baseball, I used to buy all kinds of different baseball caps because I didn't love the Phillies. And this is not saying that I'm a better fan than anybody. I'm just saying, people can make their own conclusions. Hockey, it was always Flyers. This is what I'm saying too. No matter how much I loved watching Mike Richards, when he wasn't a Flyer anymore, sure, I'd follow his career. But when he won the Stanley Cup, I can't say that I was necessarily happy for him. I wanted him to win with the Flyers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I felt the same way. Richards also pulled a Santa Claus line against Philly after he left. That really ticked me off, so I didn't like him for a while.
What did he say? Oh,
he was just shitting on Philly, like real small quote. I don't remember how long it was after he left, but it wasn't that long. And he pulled they threw snowballs at Santa Claus. I'm like, did you really say that? Like, oh my God. I felt embarrassed for him. I was like, he's just, he wanted to take a dig so bad. He said something so stupid and typical.
I think personality wise, he was probably a tough guy to like, outside of playing hockey. It's just how I felt though. Like, even though I loved that guy, I loved watching him play. And broke my heart when they traded him, back when you could break Jim's heart. Now the Flyers can do whatever they want. Like, they've done it all. There's nothing, But I can't say that I really even rooted for him. It was like, oh shit, the Kings are going to the Stanley Cup. I guess I hope they win. They have Gagne, Carter, Richards. Like, it was bittersweet even still. So for a guy like Claude Giroux, who, it's interesting, like, I don't know, the style of his play he's a great player. So I don't know how to say this without sounding like a jackass. The style of his play, didn't grip somebody like me. It was like, oh wow, Claude Giroux looks really good. But I would much rather watch a player like Mike Richards. Is that making any sense, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to what I expect out of my team and what they embody and whatnot. And it can be more exciting, and you that team's not getting embarrassed by the rivals. Just by the way they play, they embody what that symbol means.
For sure. Yeah. So Claude Giroux, 1,000 points once again. Congratulations to Flyers former captain.
I gotta apologize. I didn't mean to just shit on him the whole time. I just kind of went.
I kind of caught us going through that too, and I'm like, what? This is pretty.
It kind of went that way, and that's not right.
But we're just being real, I mean, if we were to switch up,
how much I cared, and I answered honestly, that's all.
If we were to switch up and start, faking, positivity there, it's just how we felt about Claude Giroux. There's many. If you want to listen to, positive stuff. There's a lot of other people you can listen to that will speak positively of Claude Giroux, but this is just how we felt. So let's move on a little bit here. Uh, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Tony DeAngelo, Jack. And he was up in the press box again tonight. I think I'm sitting maybe right around where he was sitting earlier. A lot of suspicion. Why isn't DeAngelo playing? I think this is his fourth game he's missed. The Flyers even went so far as to dress just 5 defensemen. He didn't play tonight. Neither did Nick Seeler. Tonight, I think, was York, Sanheim, Provorov. Help me out here. Adam Yinning. They're saying Yinning, but it's Yinning. So that's 4. Help me out. Who am I missing? York.
You see Ristolainen?
Ristolainen was out there, yeah. So, it was interesting. So here's something for you. So Chris Bennett on Twitter made a comment that, hey, maybe the Flyers already know that they're bringing back DeAngelo next year, and they want to get a look at the 5 who they're not sure about. What are your thoughts on that, Jack?
It seems like wishful thinking.
It was interesting, though, I thought, because
it's possible.
Right,
you can't rule it out, but
because it's like if you already know what you have,
they would be a little more forthcoming so they could avoid the bad speculation if that were true. But I'm not saying it's not. I just feel like the team, if it is, the team should say something positive. Christ.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, and some of these guys play games too. Don't forget about that. Like Tortorella, I have to take Tortorella at his word, because I do that with the positive things, so I have to do that with the negative things, right? I'm not going to sit here and assume. He said he hasn't spoken to him, which is interesting. Whether I believe that or not, I'm not sure. But I will say this. So I looked to my right tonight and I saw Nick Schultz having conversations with Tony DeAngelo throughout that first period. And we remember Nick Schultz is a former Flyer. He is a player development coach with the team now. And what was Nick Schultz known for, Jack? He was known for defense. He was a stay-at-home guy, right? Blocking shots, taking the body, toughing corners, things like that. What is Tony DeAngelo not great at? Playing defense, right? So now you have your former Flyer defenseman, current player development guy sitting next to Tony DeAngelo in the box, who is a very good offensive defenseman. Tortorella's complimented him multiple times throughout the year. It's one of the best first passes out of the zone in the entire NHL. And he's got him in the box watching a game with Nick Schultz. There's a lot of speculation, Jack, and it's pure rumors, by the way, that Tony DeAngelo could be traded this offseason. He could be bought out. That's being totally made up. None of that is coming from anywhere, and it's not factual. It's all rumor. So what I saw tonight, and we didn't really speculate on this our last show, I don't think, because the way I am, I kind of like to let things play out a little bit. All right, Tony DeAngelo is watching from the box. My initial impression, I'm not going to overreact to that. He's sitting in the box. He's watching games. He's getting paid $5 million a season. He's under contract for another year. And if they were going to trade him, it would have been trade deadline. And they weren't really close to moving him anywhere. So, if you're trying to showcase a guy, you play him. You don't sit him in the press box. So, a lot of people are out there contradicting themselves. And it's well, you're contradicting yourself because you're not making sense. And tonight kind of proved that for me, that, they're pulling him back a little bit. He's making the same mistakes. Just watch up here with us, and we'll show you what we're seeing. This is what we want you to do in certain situations, yada, yada. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a positive outlook, which I definitely think could be possible. And I know they play games, and Tortorella especially. I just think they got enough bad looks with things that they may not. They could just still be doing it. I just feel like something more positive would be said by somebody, Briere, Torts, anybody. Doesn't mean it's not possible. I don't know that you could change Tony D, you know, with
Mm.
Schultz and whatnot. I mean, yeah, it's what I would do. I would get them talking, and if you're invested in with him going forward, um, it's odd that like there's one side that's like he's out of here, he's gone, going back to the speculation at the trade deadline, to the other end where they're invested in him moving forward past this 2-year deal, past next season, and they're working with him. It's there's no middle ground. It feels like, and what am I more likely to believe? Yeah, I don't know. I was leaning trade for a while. These theories of yours, they do have some merit, but they are, in my opinion, still a little too wishful thinking. Is what I come back to.
Yeah, so I was just trying to find some rationality, and like I said, my whole thing was in the beginning. All right, they're sitting him out. What do they have to gain by playing him? You know what I mean? Like there's nothing to gain. Like they're meaningless games. Um, so okay, now he's watching games from the box. If you're going to take a guy out, you out of here. Hang on one second, guys. Take it easy.
Jim's a boss.
That was Uriv from Flyers Nitty Gritty. It's the man. Um, yeah. So if he's in, so back to what Chris Bennett said from Twitter. If you're not following Chris, make sure you go look him up. He's a good follow. If you know he's going to be around next year, take the one guy you know is going to be around out. Right? Who do we want to trade? Who keeps coming up in trade rumors? Ivan Provorov. I think he could be gone, but let's also remember he's the only guy that hasn't moved from his spot in the lineup. You know, hasn't been benched at any point this season. Travis Sanheim is a player a lot of people want traded. Cam York's a young guy that needs the experience. Ristolainen, they're still trying out on the power plays. They want to see what they can do with him. And then Adam Ginning's come up. Ronnie Adder's come up. It makes sense why these guys are maybe still in the lineup, or these guys that we can use next year, yada yada. Whereas if you're keeping DeAngelo, maybe it makes sense to take him out. I think I'm buying into what Chris said there, and it was an interesting perspective because if you're sitting a guy and I don't know, it just made me think a little bit. It just was interesting. What's the point of playing him? There's no real reason to play Tony DeAngelo, right? Like, who cares if he's playing or not? It's kind of how I looked at it.
Why I definitely don't disagree with any of that. I do wonder how this team views some of these players. Like, I think we're expecting some pretty big changes, or we should be, this offseason. Maybe nothing earth-shattering, but something notable for sure. And some of that mentality that you're dropping on me makes me think that they're more likely to work with what they have to an extent. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's kind of so. The only guys that I honestly think they're going to try to move is Kevin Hayes, who I think's foregone conclusion. He's gone. He doesn't fit what's happening here. The other guy that I think they could explore moving is, we talked about it on a couple shows ago, is Ivan Provorov. Other than those two guys, and the guys that drop off the roster naturally, and Braun, JVR, whoever else, those are the only two guys that I honestly see them actively trying to move. I don't. Tony DeAngelo to me is a guy they trade at next year's trade deadline. You know what I mean? Like, what team is going to take on a $5 million salary for a year when you can wait out to the trade deadline and trade for him then? Fit him under your cap. All of a sudden, you have a power play specialist. It's Tony DeAngelo is a very valuable player on a good team, as he showed with Carolina last year. So I think he's an asset. Maybe they hang on to till next year's trade deadline. Maybe they do it like something what Carolina did with Gostisbehere. Hopefully he's worth a little bit more by that point. But do you kind of get where I'm going with that?
I mean, and is that really what we expected? Or they just feel financially they can't move enough money to make it worth to wait. They have to wait too long, so they're going to try to do something in the meantime while still trying to rebuild in a way.
Yeah, I mean, so if the team came out and was like, yeah, we're going to tear everything completely down in one summer, how realistic do you think that is? And if they don't do it, could you imagine the fan outrage?
Yeah, like how can you like make all these changes and then still be stuck with certain contracts like Sanheim or the players or Couturier and guys that you can't move. I don't even know what's going on with Atkinson. Like it would be kind of silly, um, which is like why I've always have brought up like what they need to do and what they really can't do, and that's why I was so more inclined to like, guys, this is going to be long. This isn't going to be a quick fix. That's why I wanted to start it sooner. And now I do wonder how they were going to navigate those waters. I just hope that they pick the right people to keep around and not move on from. They do need to move on from some guys. Like you mentioned Provorov, how good he's been, and how much Tortorella probably likes him. We know he likes him. But for him, it's like, does he want to be here? Is definitely the way I look at it. And obviously what package you can get back. Because if you
Yeah.
move on from him, then you got a lot of work to do to actually do something with this team. And I don't know what kind of pieces you're getting back, but if they're draft picks, they're going to take quite a while to get here anyway. So it's going to tell me a lot about what their plan is. And Tony DeAngelo, I don't know if he's the catalyst by any means, because it does make sense to hang on to him and trade him at the deadline. Buying him out doesn't make any sense to me at all.
No.
Trading only if he was unhappy. We heard rumors that he didn't like losing. He missed Carolina and all that stuff. It's not what he came here for, whatever. So if that's the case, that's where I think that trading comes from before the deadline. But like to get the most value would definitely make sense at the deadline. If they keep him past that, then I'm just that Nick Schultz stuff makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
If they're going to
I
work with
think the
him going
buyout stuff
forward.
is just it's asinine to tell you the truth. Like especially if you only have 1 year left on a guy's
Yeah.
deal. Like, all right, there's an argument there, I think, with Kevin Hayes, but even that I still think is stupid. You should be and it's like people are so quick to say, "Oh, well, just retain salary, just retain salary." Well, we're over here crying about the salary cap and how they have so little space, yet we have so many people willing to take on dead cap. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, if you don't get exactly what you want for a guy, well, Kevin Hayes, they may not get that, but if someone's going to give you 2 picks to not retain money on Hayes, sorry, where was I going with that? I I would say no. We'll take back 1 pick, and you take all the money, as opposed to taking 2 picks and we retain money. That's some. I think you might be the opposite in that aspect, where it's like get all the picks where you can. Whereas I'm kind of like, I would
No,
rather have the
well,
money.
for me to retain money, especially the longer, it would have to be significant pick, not just a throw in. Like it had to be really significant. I'm not a fan of buyouts, so I'm not a fan of retaining money, unless it's short term. Because we know the team's not going to be. You could do it for a year or 2 or 3, but like I don't want them to do it the length of the contract. So
Yeah.
a lot depends. Like, man, you think about these contracts. Fletcher really left us in a bind here, and I don't necessarily disagree with all of them on the timing and the situation. Then, but it's gonna be tough. I mean, this is going to be a really interesting offseason just because we're feeling out. We knew when Fletcher was brought in, they were going to try to win. They were trying to get over the hump. They're going to take what they have. They're going to add. That's exactly what happened. When Hextall was brought in, you knew the team needed to like do something with the prospect pool, and he was that kind of guy, and he was successful in LA, and that seemed to be the approach. That makes sense. I have no idea what Briere is going to do. I feel like I know what he should do, but even then, I am sometimes at a loss for words when it comes to rebuilding and dealing with the contracts they have. Like some of them are truly immovable. And it's even the minor one, they're not that minor, but even a guy like Hayes, like I'm really curious to see how that's going to go and what they're going to end up doing with that. And this is Briere's first go as a GM. What a test. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I was saying tonight, this season kind of flew by, didn't it? I mean, when you look back at November, it seems it does seem kind of long, but tonight was the last home game, and it's done already. They have 2 more games, both on the road, and then we're looking forward to draft lottery in May. And then after that, obviously, it's the draft in June, and then free agency in usually July. Um, yeah, and I mean, once the season's done, now it starts. Uh, and it kind of started already. I want to bring this up. I didn't put this in our notes because I completely forgot, but the Flyers have informed Jay O'Brien that they would not be signing him. So the Flyers do pick up a draft pick. I think initially it's supposed to be for 2023, but I think he's got to sign with another NHL club or something before the draft. So more than likely the pick will be in 2024. So they get a second round pick for, drafting Jay O'Brien, 19th overall. But when was that? 2017, Jack?
2018 was the Farabee draft.
2018. Yeah. So, unfortunate. I think O'Brien did improve a little bit over the last couple of years, but in the shape the team's in right now, I think you'd rather have the draft pick than,
Does anybody miss O'Brien? I mean, come on. I didn't like the pick at the time. It didn't make sense to me. I tried to be positive. He had a horrible start to in college, and moving from colleges, dropping down to a lesser league. I was talked into how it was a good decision, and he's looking better, and he went over here. And it's like, geez, man, that was 2018 we drafted this kid. We're still talking about him just getting in the system, actually in the Flyers front door. I'll take the second round pick and try again. Thanks.
There you go. Yeah, so I thought that was important to bring up because they're kind of getting things started a little early. They came out and said, "Hey, we're not going to bring them back. We'd rather take the draft pick," which I think signifies where they're going to go with some things. If I'm going to make a bigger deal than it is, staying on the college track here a little bit. Skylar Brindamore, son of Rod Brindamore, who is a NCAA Frozen Four champion with the Quinnipiac. Now the name escapes me, Jack. Damn it. But Quinnipiac did win the Frozen Four championship. Skylar Brindamore is a champion. Decided not to sign with the Edmonton Oilers. It'd be cool to have a Brindamore in orange and black. Get him signed.
Oh my God, yes.
He'll probably. I mean, the first thing everybody said was he'll sign with Carolina, play for his father, which that'd be awesome. But Brindamore is on the market.
Why wouldn't he?
He almost plays like his dad a little bit. Obviously, he's not as gifted offensively, but the kid's tenacious. Face-off guy. Flyers need a face-off guy. They've struggled since Couturier's been out, and they traded Giroux. So just a guy that's out there.
Was there ever a father-son coach and player in the NHL?
So I can't take credit for this. I think Tim on Twitter. Let me get his app because this was a pretty good stat. So Kevin Dineen played for his father with the Flyers, actually.
Okay.
So
that's a good one.
Really good get there.
If I really thought about that, I probably could have remembered that. But yep, that's it.
Guess who we have on, Jack? Guess who is home from the Phillies game, setting up, so we won't bring him in yet.
Gritty.
But wow, home in record time from the Phillies game. And even though the Phillies and the Flyers both ended the same time, so probably hit some traffic. We're going to bring him in. Did you say Gritty?
Teams won, but yep.
There he is.
Look at him all dressed.
Hey. Is the audio good?
Yeah, a little loud.
Okay, 1 sec.
Trav, how many beers deep are you?
Oh,
I think
geez,
you said 7.
Oh, how many hot dogs?
8.
5.
$1.
The lines were over an hour long.
They was on Twitter. It was showing how long the lines are. So,
Absolute mess.
Yeah.
BYO.
It sounds like. So what I heard. Is the audio better now?
It's getting better. You still sound a little, still sounds like you're talking directly into the mic.
Okay.
There you go.
So it sounds like Dollar Dog Nights were such a hit last season that Tony Luke's and Chicky and Pete's complained, so that the hot dog vendors purposely did their jobs bad tonight. I don't know how true this is. This is just something I heard, but
there's a scandal at CBP.
I don't know if I should say this, but the guy at 307 who was working serving hot dogs was drinking whiskey or bourbon or something on the job.
I like that you put his number right out there.
Yeah,
You
I
didn't
mean,
have to.
it's a joke.
Wow. Did they win?
No,
Bummer.
I don't remember the final.
8-4,
It got bad. They started coming back towards the middle innings, and it got bad at the end.
Yeah.
That's a shame. Well, the
Yeah,
Flyers
so
won overtime. Tippett scored 2 goals, 26 on the year. Beautiful goal, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple topics left here. We're about 40 minutes in, Trav. We touched on DeAngelo a little bit. We touched on Giroux scoring 1,000 goals.
G Money.
Yeah, you're a big Giroux guy. I actually have to take another traditional pee in the middle of our press row show here. So if you want to talk Giroux for a second, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Bear with us if you're watching live. We'll have this edited up. There you go.
My guy, G Money. To be honest, my second favorite player of all time behind Danny Briere. Absolute legend. He played on a lot of shit teams here, to be completely we got to be honest. Played on a lot of bad teams here where I didn't hear the podcast, but it sounds like Jakey Voracek did a podcast this week where he said we really never had a shot at winning the cup with that core. And part of me agrees. I really like that team in 2012 and on top of 2020 as well. I thought both of them teams could have won a cup. But other than that, I mean, most of that was under GM Ron Hextall, and it's like the depth on them teams, you had no shot. It's like I think that was what Hextall was. Obviously, he wanted to win a cup, but his plan was just kind of, we're going to sit in the middle here and hope that we can sneak into the playoffs, and if you get in, anything can happen. I think that was his philosophy. And, okay, if we miss the playoffs, it's not the end of the world. We're going to get a good pick. I trust my scouting staff, and we're going to make a good pick. We're going to get a prospect in the first round. You could say what you want about that. That's a whole different story. I mean, I friggin' love G, but it was time to move on from both sides, I think. I'm big on the whole pretty much a decade, not exactly a decade, but pretty close, was a failure. 2015 on. And I just think sometimes it's time to move on, time to get going, try something
Travis,
new.
Real quick, you know what happened in 2015?
2015, we missed the playoffs.
Today's the anniversary of it.
Oh, Mr. Snider passing away.
And it was all downhill from there.
Was that 16 or 15? I think that might have been 16.
15, I think they said. Or was it, they say?
I think 16, because we
you
made
tell
the
me
playoffs
15?
that year.
Well, I
We
think
faced
they
Washington
did.
round 1.
Was it 15, 16? Is that what I'm thinking?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay.
What are you
So,
doing,
yeah.
Giroux memories?
So it's like it was all downhill from there too. So a couple things real quick, because he did his, the whole you got into Hextall there, which is funny, but about G.
Oh, shit.
And I think you would have been mad at me if you heard us talking about G in his 1,000 points because and just the season he's having. But it's you. I also think you would probably agree with most of what I said. Right? You kind of alluded to it. You kind of alluded to it, and they were horrible for 10 years. And Giroux was great, but to your point, Hextall seemed to want to rebuild without getting rid of anybody on his roster outside of like Coburn and Hartnell, and that was very early Hartnell, and it's like he was okay with like G and Jake's years just ticking off as Shannon Couturier came up. And yeah, it just felt like he wasted their primes. And then when it came time for their final push, G's in his 30s at this point.
Yeah.
They had the culture was able to manifest, I believe, during this time period that was so horrible for this locker room. So yeah, I mean, I think we're saying a lot of the same things. I just was a lot harder, and it's not G's fault. It's just the error that he's the face of.
Yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about G as a player, as a captain. I just think that whole era was a failure and it was time to move on.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah. So
I think that for the team and himself, like it would have been cool for G to hit 1,000 points as a Flyer, play 20 years. I mean, he's only 34 and he's still putting up all these points. Like I saw someone today say, "Oh, he might hit 1,100." I think he smashes 1,100. He hasn't shown any signs of slowing down.
No.
But just as a Flyers team perspective and as a Claude Giroux perspective, it was probably time to move on for both sides.
Yeah, I think we're saying all the same things. It just comes off like you're shitting on him.
No, that
It's
me
not-
personally,
I love that guy.
I know,
Absolute
not a bad thing
warrior.
to say, right?
Great player. I've heard nothing but good things from him as a kid. You know what? A lot of players came through here and didn't have good tenures. And really the only guys who ever came out and said, no one ever came out and said G's a bad captain, but they said the locker room had problems, was Briz in that 2012-13 season, the half lockout, and Dale Weiss. And I kind of would love to know more about that. Like, ask Vinny LeCavalier what he thought about the locker room, RJ Umberger, Andrew McDonald. Some of them guys who didn't really have good tenures here. I'd like to hear their perspective if they think there was a locker room problem. But no one ever really came out and said anything bad about them besides them two. But I remember when that Dale Weiss stuff came out and everyone was like, "Oh, well, Dale Weiss sucked. His opinion shouldn't matter." And it's like, well, let's listen to the guy. Maybe he's on to something. I don't know. I mean, he played in Montreal. They had some good teams. They had some teams. But from personally what I have heard, G was a pretty good captain. We all saw it. Hell of a player. At the end of the day, it was time to move on.
I agree. And while we're having this Claude Giroux conversation, I just happened to check the scores for tonight. Did you guys see that Pittsburgh lost to Chicago in that must-win game?
They had their own destiny at hands, man.
They lost 5-2 to Chicago.
Wow.
They are now a point behind the Islanders, and with one game left to play.
How they're gonna? They care more about Bedard than they do the playoffs.
Yeah.
See, I really
Typical Penguins.
it's not going to happen, but I was praying both Pittsburgh and Islanders would lose. Half of it, well, obviously I hate Pittsburgh, but from the Islanders' standpoint, like half of it's I can't stand that team. That they eliminated us in 2020, but I hate the roster mix-up.
This is Pittsburgh or
No,
New York?
New York. I just feel like they have so many guys who play the same style of game, and it just makes for boring hockey. It's like a bunch of big guys
They're built for
clogging up the
playoffs.
neutral zone. I can't stand watching them play.
They're built for so whoever they play, and let's say it's Boston. I don't think Boston steamrolls them. I think that's a series that maybe goes 6 games. So real quick here. So each team I mentioned, New York, Pittsburgh has 1 game left. Guess who they play? Pittsburgh plays Columbus in their last game, and the Islanders play the Canadiens. So can't really get much easier. They
Yeah,
both
I
win.
think they had. I mean, this is going back a week or two, but they had the easiest schedule the rest of the way. Pittsburgh.
Yep. So Buffalo also controlled their own destiny. They lost as well. Now they were the team that I was kind of rooting for. Like maybe they'd be fun. It's a different team in the playoffs. They lost 6-2 to New Jersey. They have 2 games left to play with 87 points. Florida's punched their ticket. They're in. There's 1 spot left between the Islanders, Penguins, and the Sabres.
Are the Panthers officially in?
Yep.
Okay.
Officially in, 92 points.
How about Alex Lyon? Have you guys talked about him?
We have not. We have not. Go ahead.
I I did not think this guy was a good goalie. Straight up. I did not think he was a good NHL goalie. But you cannot underestimate what the guy's done the last two, more than that, the last month, ever since Bob got sick or whatever that was. I mean, he had that bad game in Philly. Ever since, I don't know what the stats are. He's been on a roll.
I'm looking at him here. So he has won every single start since January 28th, except for the game against the Flyers.
Wow.
3, 4, 5, 6. He's 7-1 in that span and has not allowed over 2 goals in a game since that Flyers game.
What did you guys think about Alex Lyon? Like I thought he was a minor league starter at best.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. He was good. I liked him. I thought they should have still, in some capacity, held on to him. And but yeah, I didn't think he was anything more than an occasional. You bring him up to be your backup and sit on your bench. He's an AHL guy. So yeah, this is shocking. I don't know how sustainable it's going to wind up being,
right?
But like, still, like, this is not. It's a little bittersweet.
Like
again.
We had Michael Layton on Nasty Knuckles Wednesday or Thursday, and we got a lot of comments saying, "Well, is this Alex Lyon being Michael Layton 2.0, just getting hot at the right time and going on a roll?"
That could be fun,
right? And it's like
possible. I mean, Brian Boucher did that,
Yep.
He could be that, he could.
I would root for the Panthers in that case.
Oh, I definitely would. Yeah, I
why not?
I always want to see the Panthers do well because I'm always worried about them.
Plus, Claude Giroux plays for him. Oh no, he doesn't.
no, he does not. He does not.
That sucked. That
right. He picked the perennial playoff team in Ottawa, right? Because he cares about winning so much. Not just kidding. All right, I won't go there.
Don't go there. Don't, because you know what?
Look, we were talking down on him, but we had our reasons. That was just an unprovoked attack.
My one thing is, us Flyers fans, we all hoped and prayed Johnny Hockey would come home to Philly, and we suck. And we all wanted that. What's the difference between Johnny coming to Philly and G going to Ottawa?
No difference.
Made more sense for Ottawa.
Right. Like, I think Ottawa's going to be good.
I do too.
With Jimmy Stu and Kachuk, like, their young core is elite.
I like Sanderson too. Their defenseman.
Jake Sanderson.
They traded for Chikrin. Let that team have an off season.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not a big fan of Cam Talbot. I think.
Well, once they trade for Carter Hart, they'll be set.
Or Alex Lyon.
Or Alex Lyon.
Right.
There you go.
Have we mentioned any former Flyers goalies? Wasn't that a thing the last couple of weeks?
Well, we talked about Alex Lyon.
Johan Backlund.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Stolar is pretty good.
Stoli.
As well. Brian Elliott's still doing this. Well,
the Moose Man.
But it's unbelievable, isn't it? The only one I can talk about and feel good about is Neuwirth. Like,
I could not stand him.
Yeah.
And you know what the funny thing is? I don't want to go on a tangent here because it's irrelevant.
Now we got 6 minutes left. Do your thing.
I wanted us to sign Neuwirth to be Mason's backup, and he was so good that first year. But that second year, it's like Hackstall didn't know how to use him and Mason together, and it just spiraled out of control. And then Neuwirth just kept getting hurt, and nothing went well after that.
You know who you can blame for that? If you need someone to blame.
Let's hear it.
Ron Hextall.
Yep.
In what world is it smart to sign a guy like Brian Elliott, who he was kind of, not that he was breaking down, but he had some hip stuff going on before he came to the Flyers, right? Or no? Am I remembering that wrong?
He had some hip stuff, and he had that core muscle injury that, I'm always talking about. I feel like
Well,
Kevin
Hacksaw
Hayes
gave
has
him
had
that.
it. G Ghost.
Hacksaw gave him the core muscle injury.
Right. So you
He
bring a guy
overplayed the
like
hell out
Elliott
of him.
but so you have a backup. And I think we talked about this on here before, so I won't go crazy with this. But then you back him up with Michael Neuwirth, who's basically made of glass.
Yeah.
Well, shocker, we had that 8 goalie year.
Yeah,
I think Ottawa had that this year too.
they did.
7 goalies.
They did. Yep.
They couldn't beat the record. God damn it.
Yep. Maybe it's a G thing.
Right. He's the goalie curse.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, just that's interesting stuff. You guys remember Roman Czechmonic?
Oh, yeah, of course. He was crazy.
I'm too young, but
Cranium
Yeah,
Carol?
he's the one he yelled at the bench, and so they were shooting slap shots at his head in practice.
Really?
Yeah, you don't remember him yelling at the bench?
No.
He skated to center ice and screamed at the bench during a game. And then I heard later in practice, I think I heard Jeremy Roenick say it. They were like taking slap shots at his head.
Get the hell
His helmet
out.
on.
Yeah, he might have been a little crazy. Too many.
you know what? I actually don't think that's too rare. I know goalies hate that shit in practice.
Well, no,
when you're
that's
shooting
not
high
why
at
he
him.
did it though.
Oh.
That's not why he called them out.
Okay.
Yeah, they were just playing bad, and he just had it. And that's when the team was good too. That's when the team was always in the playoffs. Playoffs weren't even a question.
Garth Snow.
That was my first favorite backup goalie for the Flyers.
He packed up Hextall, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was
Yeah,
a
there's some
GM
good
for the
names.
Islanders for 15 years.
That's
Yep.
right. That's right. They stunk the whole time too,
The
didn't
whole
they?
time. The whole
Yep.
time.
The only player I can remember off the Islanders, like when I was younger, is Ziggy Palffy, and that's it. Who else did
Talk
they
about the
have?
90s.
Yeah.
Well, Hextall played for him for a hot second.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a year.
Huh. See, that's a good pool there because I never knew that. You learned something there.
Even the Islanders were bad when I was growing up. It was Tavares was a young rookie. Okposo, Matty Molson.
Matty Molson. Remember how his
He had that
run,
one good year.
little run?
Didn't they sign him to a huge contract after
Buffalo
that?
did. I think he went to Buffalo.
Yeah,
Buffalo,
Buff,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
And then
Did they trade him
did
for
Chuck
Okposo?
Fletcher trade for him in Minnesota?
Probably.
I think he
Sounds
did.
right. He definitely played. For
That was the
Minnesota.
Vanek deal. Yep.
Yep, that's correct.
Wait, Vanek played for Minnesota at one point, or Molson went with Vanek?
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was a 1-for-1, but Vanek went to New York in exchange for Molson.
Oh, the Islanders.
Yes.
I used to really like that guy, Thomas Vanek.
I
hated him when he
really
played for the
hoping they'd be in on. They never were.
I thought Andreas Nodal was going to be the next Thomas
Oh.
He was.
Vanek. Yeah.
That dude could shoot, but man, his hands were like brickstones.
Nodal.
Yeah. I
I'm
liked
looking
him too. You know what? I thought he was a good defensive player, but when Lavi was playing him on the top line, it's like just going to get outmatched.
Yeah. He knew there was a really pretty low ceiling at that point. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, damn.
I didn't realize how many teams Vanek played for after the
Oh,
Sabres.
yeah, he was. Yeah, he
Detroit, Minnesota,
went everywhere.
New York.
Looking like 7 teams here. Yeah.
L.A. at some point.
Did he win a cup with Detroit? When did they win?
No.
No, that was Hossa.
Hmm.
No, it wasn't. No, that was the year before.
That's right, because Hossa lost with the
Yeah, with
Red
the
Wings, they
Penguins,
lost
with
to the
Detroit, and then he
Penguins,
won with Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. A little surprised by this
Yeah,
from Vanek. He only played in 1,020. I mean, only, but Claude Giroux just played 1,000 games, and I thought Vanek was around a lot longer than he was. And just see, that's a thing too. So this is props to Claude Giroux, who's now into one game away from 1,100 and still producing the way he is. Vanek's last season, 36 points in 64 games, and he's done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So props to Claude Giroux, because I know it sounded like we were kind of crapping on him earlier. There really is, maybe one day I'll appreciate him. Like, for example, Sidney Crosby, hated him when I was young. Nowadays, when I watch him, it's almost sad because his career's coming to an end. I appreciate a guy like Sidney Crosby. I like watching him play, even if he's going to fucking shred the Flyers.
Yeah,
It's weird
speak for
to say.
yourself.
It's just like, all right, I'm just going to watch this game and be wild, I guess, because what am I
Fuck
going to
that
do?
guy.
It's like
Yeah, I
feel
can't
like
get
it's
behind it.
wasted energy. Hate,
I get what you mean.
but I can hate Letang and Malkin. But for Crosby, it's just like, you know what? Let me just watch this guy and appreciate this.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I appreciate Letang. I think he's the most underrated player. I'm 24 years old. I think he's the most underrated player in my lifetime, in my time as a fan.
Probably because he played with Crosby. All you hear is Crosby, Malkin.
Mhm.
I hate Letang. I mean,
I think he's made of glass and he's a sissy.
so one thing that's amazing though is he suffered 2 strokes.
Yeah, that's insane, man.
I'd say he's made of glass. He comes back from a stroke.
Well, he had one this year. He had a stroke and he's playing. It's like,
crazy.
Jack, you remember you were trying to trade him to me, and I was like, didn't he just have a stroke
I was,
in our dynasty league?
Yeah, I was like, I was hoping you forgot. I did trade him, by the way. I pulled it off.
You did. You got some good picks, and you still made the playoffs.
Yeah, and he beat me in the playoffs. It was great.
What do you think, boys? We're about an hour in. It's 11 o'clock. We're turning off the lights here. I'm one of 5 people left. Should we end the episode, or do you guys want to keep going and I'll drop off?
Your call, brother.
This is a democracy. We can vote.
I mean, I didn't see any of the game. I saw the highlights. I didn't see any of the game, so I can't really offer any insight.
All right, we'll take it down. We can wrap it.
Okay.
Gotta save some juice for next week. There's gonna be no more games, Jim.
Yeah, we're gonna be looking towards the lottery.
Let me
Okay,
me
we are
ask you
again.
guys real quick, and I apologize if you guys already talked about it. How did Adam Ginning look tonight? Did he play a lot?
He had a big blocked shot that Torts was probably whacking it to after the game. It was a nice block, but I mean, that's he had a penalty too, which I don't think wasn't really a penalty, but they'll call it every time.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't think I'd ever see him with the Flyers.
Neither do I.
His ceiling is Robert Hagg. I'm like, oh wow, great 2nd round pick.
He didn't look out of place though. I'll say that.
Okay.
He wasn't getting beat or anything. Like remember Adder had like a terrible first game. He didn't look like that. He kind of blended in a little bit from what I saw up here. I don't know. Maybe it looked different on TV. I'm not sure, but it didn't look out of place. So maybe he's a guy that they look at for another game or two. We'll see. But yeah, guys, let's wrap this up. Our last game on Press Row, last Flyers home game of the season. Where's my lines? All right. So for Jack and Travis, I'm Jim. Everybody, thanks for hanging out. 2 more games left this year. We'll do 1 more show for the regular season next week. Next time you catch us live will be then. So everybody, make sure you're taking your vitamins. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone, and let's go Flyers.
Chico Resch.
Good one, Jack. I was waiting for it.